and welcome to this seminar, which dedicated to EDI and education. With us today, we have Professor Jennifer George from Goldsmiths, University of London. Professor Jennifer is passionate about inclusion and accessibility, have championed a lot of projects related to accessibility and disabled students in Goldsmiths, and she served as head of computing until 2024 in Goldsmiths. She has dedicated her research to human-computer interaction, and I will leave Jennifer to talk more about her work and the awards that she been awarded throughout the years. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for being with us today. Looking forward to hear more about your research whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi, thank you, Nadine, and hello, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to speak, and thank you for the introduction. So yes, I said, I'm Jennifer. I've been in academia since in higher education around 2005. I started teaching, and then since then I've been on a bit of a journey working across various different types of higher education providers. So I will make references to other places briefly, but I'm going to focus predominantly on my time in Goldsmiths, which has been the last 7 years. So I am currently the associate head for the School of Computing, focusing on education and student experience. So as Nadine mentioned previously, I was a head of department. And yeah, that was more budgetary, but also I also had responsibility overall for a very specific focus subject area. So today I will be focusing on a few different aspects. First, I'll provide some context for disability inclusion and accessibility. And then I will talk a little bit about pandemic and exams. It's a snapshot of some work that happened and something positive that came out of it, and then how I rolled out a 3-year plan as part of a wider strategy for Goldsmiths, and some reflections on what's happened since then. It's been a few years since I did this now. So I think for you to have a view of, if you do something now, what impact will it have in a few years' time might also be useful. So how I'm going to structure this, I will go through a few aspects, and because it's a 3-year plan, after each year I will stop for questions. So please do speak up, or if somebody's looking at the chat, perhaps Nadine, you could read out the questions as well. I really don't mind how you pose and ask any questions or comments. And then towards the end, I can, turn my slides off and we could just have a conversation. So firstly, the context. So digital accessibility, with the publication of the official digital guidelines for web content accessibility guidelines, has been around since early 2000s. When it actually started creeping into the UK legislation and having an impact on that was 2018. That is when we had our first legislation published, called the Public Sector Bodies Accessibility Regulation 2018, also known as PS-BAR 2018. That required that any public-facing information or public body with their website and mobile apps, whether internal facing or external facing, had to meet the legal guidelines. That was the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG 2. Whatever the latest version was at the time. It was 2.1 when the legislation was published. Now it's 2.2. So we had to be compliant to a AA rating. So if you have any specific questions about that, you can ask me later, but I won't go into the details of exactly what that is. So prior to that, so we've had the Disabled Students Allowance for a while now, for several years. And in 2016 was the first time, at least that I've been working in this space, where the government made huge cuts and pushed quite a significant amount of the responsibility for reasonable adjustments onto the universities. And I was in Anglia Ruskin University at that time, and led on the actual transformation. And this was a period where web content accessibility, people weren't particularly aware of what that was. People weren't really on board with document accessibility and what that meant and how that linked to students with disabilities. At the time in Anglia Ruskin, we had roughly, I think, around 17% students with disclosed disabilities. So when I moved to Goldsmiths, I found that it was a bit higher. And now, depending on the subject area and the programs, we can have up to 28% of students on a single course with a range of different disabilities. So one of our largest programs, computer science, we have 27%, and that's roughly 200 students in a year. We have 27% of students with some form of disclosed disability. This is not taking on board international students who do not have a diagnosis, other students who don't have diagnosis, the students with temporary disabilities, and students whose English is not their first language as well. Okay, so briefly, what happened during the pandemic, and I was head of department, we had a large proportion of international students who had all moved back to their countries. And they had varying bandwidth for Wi-Fi. They had care responsibilities, and many of our students were also key workers, and of course existing disabilities were exacerbated as well. We also had students with low participation income backgrounds. So I will kind of back up what we've done here at this time later on. We switched to open book exams with academic integrity, so everyone got take-home exams. We also had built-in auto-graded randomized questions and answers. Again, we had to really think through about academic integrity. And we also had to chunk all the exams, so incorporating how some students were eligible for breaks. We gave those breaks to everyone. And then we also had, this 48-hour window flexibility where students could choose when they could do their exams. We had many students who were sharing computers with siblings as well. And we also had a randomized mechanism for selecting students for Viva. So in hindsight, yes, the setting up took the most time because all staff suddenly had to learn how to do take-home exams, and not everyone was trained in that. Huge benefit was the marking time reduced because we had embedded so much auto-grading. And the students were very happy. They really appreciated being able to choose the best time, and it was as simple as a morning student. I'm a morning person. I perform better in the morning, or I perform better at night once the whole household is asleep, and they were able to choose what worked best for them. Worked for that time, but that was 2020 and 2021, and come 2022, we had OpenAI launching ChatGPT or going public with it, and then we also had generative AI, going full scale. So many different software, and so our parameters have changed since then, so we are not doing the same anymore. It was inclusive for that context, worked very well. So I'll move on now to year one, and then I'll pause. So first year, this was planned for across 3 years, how I would start from a subject or a department level, grow to a school level, and then roll it out to university level across Goldsmiths. So initial phase of the work, I would say, was the hardest. That was the networking, identifying what's the current level of understanding across IT services to disability and wellbeing team, our librarians or library services, employability team, what support do we offer our disabled students, and what is the support from our legal team as well. It was also interesting to see how many students had reasonable adjustments in place and and as a university, how aware were we about their legal rights. So networking, finding out the work that was already there, so no one really felt like I was overstepping their area of work. And also, if someone has already done good work, how do I utilize that so I'm not spending time doing the same thing? So pulling together all of that took the larger part of the first year. And this is how far we got in the first year. So we did the consultation, and the first area for large scale impact was VLE templates. So we use Moodle as a platform, and staff. So for example, so my subject area, my department had 240 different modules, and every module leader populated their VLE page in the way they thought was best, and it worked for them, and that's how they've been doing it for years. So from this consultation, especially speaking to us disabled students and students as a large population, was they didn't know where to find information, or they spent a lot of time doing that. So they would say, I know where to find assessment in this module, but I don't know where to find it in somebody else's module. So they spent a lot of time finding that. So they asked, can everyone put it in the same place, please? So what I came up with was a same structure template with guidance and also reasoning for who's asked, why. And so we put together this template, and centrally they rolled it across our entire department. Years later now, they've rolled it across the whole university, but at that time, just our department, and we provided limited access to how they could carry things over from the previous years, but it had to be within the fixed new template that was structured with good heading styles, that was in proper order, to the proper color themes, to style sheets. Everything was used in the template. We provided guides to staff, and one of the key things was not just putting this in place, but also checking that and ensuring it was happening. And as staff changed, that we stayed on top of it. So we had someone spending 2 days every term, an hourly paid member of staff. We would train them, and they would just go through every single module page and send emails out to say, this is how you're performing in your module page. So this is roughly what the template looks like now. So a screenshot of, so just picking out things. This is exact. So everyone had to put a photo of them, and their lecture details, where to find it, welcome message, module specs. So there was a clear template all the way down to which block the assessment would sit in, and we also provided not only guidance, but it was also, we monitored that as well. Students had a specific list of things they wanted before a term started, and they had some things they wanted when the term finished. Yes, when the term finished, but they also wanted certain things before a lecture. So we separated that. So by week 0 or welcome week, here's the list that has to be populated for every module. 48 hours before every lecture, these are the things that need to be available in your VLE page. And immediately after the lecture, then we said, yes, the recording and the complete lecture. So this was drawn up based purely on the types of reasonable adjustment we were making, but we made it for everyone. Since then, this template has been adopted centrally for the entire university and also updated annually. We get feedback from students and then update. Additional things we did in year 1. I also ran staff development sessions. Sometimes we got experts from outside, others I delivered it. So one was on some topics on the training, understanding disability, understanding dyslexia, neurodiversity, mental health. assistive technology, especially for staff who would be supporting students with that, like our tech team staff. I also ran a staff survey on to find out staff needs for many years, especially if there's a member of staff who's been with Goldsmiths for 20 years, then they haven't updated what their needs are, and their needs have changed, or their awareness of their needs may have changed. So, writing to others and asking what support would you need, and there were some interesting findings there. That if you have any specific questions, happy to share. And we made a lot of changes, and it made the workplace also a better informed, supportive place. End of the first year reflections, 88% of our students from our department rated the new structure of the VLE as inclusive and accessible. 62% of them thought the VLE had improved in a year. And they said the navigation had improved, the pages were neater, and they said, they asked, can you make similar changes in these other areas? So, they asked for Panopto, which is our lecture recording system. So I'll pause there before I move on to year 2. Do you have any questions at this point? Okay, I'll move on to year 2. Okay. So the next step was I felt so I also ran training sessions on software specific ones in the second year. So that was on Word, PowerPoint, how do you run your own accessibility tests. So we conducted our internal audit, and did every term there was a new cycle. And I've improved it. I'd taken the department as far as I could in terms of digital accessibility. So at this point, I thought, okay, I need somebody external to validate this. Now, when I was in Anglia Ruskin, I worked with AbilityNet as a charity, and they helped deliver some training, and also did a full audit of the university. So I got in touch with them, and they offered to audit computing. So they audited our work, and badged our department silver. They've got bronze, silver, and gold. And ours was the first to receive a silver, and the first to go. Usually they start with nothing or bronze and say these are the changes and come back in a year. And so that was brilliant to get there straight away. And that also gave us a nice picture. And some of these pointed to strategic central university-wide changes that needed to be made. So, so then I had to go back to the wider university, all of the networks I'd built in my first year, and asked, is there anybody else who'd like to be reviewed? And AbilityNet also offer a institutional review for accessibility. Where does it feature strategically? What's the awareness? So, sorry, they also provided kind of a gap analysis. So there was a huge amount of buy-in. A lot of work had to go into that. I got the buy-in, got the funding, and we were able to conduct a full review of Goldsmiths and receive a detailed plan from strategy all the way down to individual subject areas and departments, what changes needed to be made. Since then, 5 other departments have also been reviewed, and they are carrying on with their own plans, subject-specific plans there. Current status, not always positive. There are a lot of challenges, especially in the current academic climate. Several restructures and staff turnover. Some of the knowledge, the passion can be lost for working areas such as this. But through all of this, the need and the demand and the understanding for digital accessibility has gone up. So I now collaborate with AbilityNet to deliver workshops and conduct audits as part, similar to the ones they did to when I was in Anglia Ruskin and when I was in Goldsmiths. Now I am one of their consultants who goes out with them. So that's been hugely beneficial to me as well. Any questions at this point about year 2 before I move on to year 3?
Hi, Jennifer. Can I ask a question myself?
Yep, sure, go on.
Yeah, thank you so much. Two things actually. The first year, how did you get the staff to participate in the survey that you run to ask them about their need, and how you structure it? What did you have in mind to ask them? And the second question about how you seem to have already established relationship with AbilityNet. If we're start from uh, no relationship with them, how we can get them to audit and review our accessibility, digital accessibility
Right.
improvement.
So, yeah, okay, thank you. So, first one was our staff participation. It was, in some ways, I was in a because I was the head of department, and no one's actually surveyed our staff to ask, do you have, I mean, it was not directly asking, do you have a disability? But that was part of the questionnaire as well. It was more a well-being. Is there anything you can, you'd benefit from support? And, one person had been in the department for a long time and his hearing was being affected. And he asked, can I have support in these um, when I go into a classroom, and we were able to review kind of mobile systems, mobile audio systems. And then there was there were actually at least two people who had dyslexia. These are members of staff who said, one of the things we struggle is we need support with checking our material before we put it on the VLE. And we were able to, pair up, or, we had teaching assistants for those modules anyway. So it was looking at what is the assistance this member of staff would get. And there were, so it was about creating, so by that time I had run a few workshops, awareness had been raised, giving specific examples of what am I reasonably able to do. And then there's also the access to work grant you can apply for from the government, telling staff about it, and I will help you apply, and supporting them. Looking at how much of this can we do this anyway without applying for that. So we told them clearly, these are the kind of things we're able to support with, but do ask. If we don't know, we can't help. And there were many staff who came forward. When I say many, every year it was a bit different, but it's become a culture where now staff are more confident, comfortable speaking to students about, I'm dyslexic, or I'm neurodiverse, or this is what I struggle with, and this is how I work with this. And it's been quite helpful for students to see that as well, just, modeling good practice in terms of this is how I, work with it. So that's your response to your first question. Second one is very direct. I can put you in touch with AbilityNet. Their main website. Also, they've got their contact details as well, but I can pop the link in the chat or email you after this, Nadine, so you can have an audit done as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so I will move on to the next year. So the year three was more growing institutionally as a university. But what's next? So certain areas, these were, I would say, the biggest pieces of work. Disability policy update. So almost all of the changes that were made to the VLE template, including when the material went up, that was all embedded as part of the disability policy. Now, we also separated the policy, the adjustments we made into two. One part was universal access or universal reasonable adjustments, and then the others were reasonable adjustments. Now, universal reasonable adjustments were previously a student with a disability would have to ask, can I have the lectures 2 working days before, or being able to record their lectures. Those were offered as a standard to all students. Everybody put their lectures up 2 days before anyway. So student didn't have to ask for it. So those things were all shifted to universal reasonable adjustments. That shifted from students having to ask to staff. Now, when a student applied for reasonable adjustments, they could simply pick, I want this category, universal reasonable adjustments, or specific ones. So specific one could be, I need a note taker, or I need a sign language interpreter. So that was very, very specific. The reason they had to choose one or the other was the deadline extensions. So if they needed additional time, that adjustment had to be made, but they did not have to go through the same process of checking if every adjustment was made in order for them to get that. Second thing was a digital strategy. When Goldsmiths revised the digital strategy, because we had done the institutional audit, we were able to get some of the strategic points into the digital strategy. For example, checking every software you procure, the right legal aspects of accessibility were satisfied. So we were able to, embed that. And also it was the digital literacy in education as well. Every module, every program we taught also had to respond to how are you making your how is your curriculum inclusive? Part of that, I also introduced teaching computing students. It was an optional module, but it is now accredited by IAAP, the International Association for Accessibility Professionals, to how to design for accessibility and how do you, so that is more web design or more professional level, not day-to-day document design, which is what most of us do. This work was also contributed as part of the TEF case studies. I obtained 2 international grants and we were able to collaborate and produce projects, which is an online course. I'll pop the link later on. You can do the course as well. So let me tell you a little bit about the course. So the course is called 5 Minutes of Digital Inclusion. And you can choose, the course is built in the Open University platform because it's open internationally. It is currently running in 3 languages. Let me just speak about the English one. You can take it 5 minutes a day. So we either introduce a disability or introduce a new accessibility feature every day. Or you can go, you know what, I don't have the discipline to sit down for 5 minutes every day. Let me do all 3 hours in one go. You can do that. Or you could do 1 week's content, 25 minutes a day. Or you can package it whatever way it works for you. Completely accessible. You can also get digital badges for different skills if you complete it. Generally about raising awareness, but I am coming from a teaching and scholarship background. Usually I know research grants are kept for research staff, but I approach grants with, this is my scholarship, but I've done this work, and whoever does it, I build in the impact questions, obtain that feedback, and it is going towards my impact case study for the ref as well. And I continue to be on a teaching and scholarship, so it's working okay. Do a lot work in a lot of public impact cases as well. In addition, I've also have some international partnerships where developing countries have been able to set up 2 disability support centers in universities. So, and then there's the impact that comes with that as well. So, firstly, impact within Goldsmiths is where we used to make individual adjustments for students by request. We have reduced that by introducing that universal access system, VLE adjustments, document accessibility, recording. We reduced the individual reasonable adjustment by 85%. So we are able to put in more resources towards those who need it more and be more effective in those spaces as well. So that's been the biggest and main impact for me. And then part of that, whether it was staff or students, whenever a specific request came up, we were able to revisit as part of the strategy, the whole review that Goldsmiths had with AbilityNet. We were able to revisit all our accessibility facilities. For example, the hearing loops, the ramps to accessibility of the library, how do students get alternative features, of alternative resources. So we've revisited everything and we've been able to put in place and be more aware of what changes to make. So again, that's the establishing disability support centers, and I've also got the grant link there, and I'll share these slides so you can have the link, and I'll pop the link in the chat as soon as I finish as well. So personal recognition is the last thing I'm going to talk about. So all of these areas of impact contributed to me becoming a National Teaching Fellow that the high advanced HE provides, or awards rather. That also contributed towards, I think, earlier work contributed towards the senior fellowship. So at the senior fellowship level, one of the things I did was delivering workshops on accessible Word documents to accessible PowerPoint, and the impact with that and the cyclical delivery of that. I'm still doing that. So every academic year, I still run workshops so once a year I run, accessible Word, accessible PowerPoint, and start of every term, 2 weeks before the start of every term, how do you set up your VLE pages in an accessible way? Why? What's your expectation? That's been so since 2020. I've run it every term. Yes, we had just come to the end of 25-26 academic year. I offer 2 sessions. All staff attend, at least within computing. I leave the rest of the departments to central units to deliver the session. But within computing, where we started it, staff turn up on the day, set everything up, and they're ready for their session. And once you get the hang of it, it only takes 1 hour per session. So running 2 sessions at the start of term is okay. It's not much of a burden. All of this work, all of the impact, the student feedback, the best feedback we got from students is absolutely no complaint about the VLE. You're not going to get better than that. It's never going to be amazing, but having 0 complaints from we don't know where to find information all the way to, nothing. It never comes up on any kind of complaint. All of this contributed also to my professorship, being appointed as a professor on again being a teaching and scholarship rather than a researcher. And my collaboration now with AbilityNet as well. So I am as I mentioned earlier, I collaborate with them, and I also run training workshops and consultancies for them as well. Okay. So that brings me to the end of my presentations, and I will open the floor. I am going to come out of my screen share and take any questions.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That's very informative. I think the whole structure that you had in mind is absolutely amazing and very effective. I think how you describe it, I can see in my vision, how can I implement it somehow here? I have two questions, if colleagues don't mind. Of course, if anybody has their hands up, I can give them priority. But I think um, I am now in the position to ask question. Regarding having the really no complaints. So tell me more about it. I wanted to hear more about it. You describe it a little bit that we have the lecture 2 days in advance and we have the recording as well 2 days in advance. Is that what
No,
you're
no, no, no.
saying?
So we have so that when this is about when the information goes up. 2 weeks before the start, so 1 week before the start of term. So first time students get access to the VLE page and they log in. So I've
Okay.
got detailed guidelines on exactly what, so I'm going to speak just from my memory. So information, so when students start the module, first time they log in so that they don't go into an empty page, that'll have information about their module leader, what the module is about, the types of assessments. And then they start their lectures, week 1. 2 days before their lecture, they will have the slides on it. Now, slides have to be accessible and any reading material. So they need to have passed the accessibility test that run checker.
Yeah.
There are many staff who incorporate interactive questions in their slides. And they can be hesitant to, I don't want to put everything, I want to keep something for the class, and that's okay. The key thing that came from students is they want to have some kind of a structure, especially for neurodiverse students. What they find most helpful is the structure of the lecture. So what we ask for is, at the very least, include the main structure of your lecture. Immediately after the lecture, and I say immediately, within 24 hours, let's say, the recording of the lecture and the full set of slides will go online. So that's what we expect all our staff, with at least within computing, to do, and we also monitor it.
Okay, how you monitor it?
So at the start, so week 1, we have a special. We will pay somebody, another staff member, especially maybe somebody like our technicians or teaching assistants. We give them the exact parameter what we have agreed, and we ask them to check against that and see, have all of these materials set up in every module page for start of term. So they do that, and then this is kind of the ideal scenario. There are times when we've been unable to do it at the best time. Then maybe week 2 or 3, just to see that every member of staff is putting the material up ahead and the recording after. We've got the details of naming convention as well, so it just doesn't say week 1, week 2, but has a meaningful name in the consistent format. Then somebody will check that that's happening as well. And by that time, the full assignment or guidelines will also be up, and what that looks like. So we have another crib sheet for the same people to go through and check as well.
Okay. So three phases of monitoring.
Yeah.
The second question that I have as well related to grant, and how did you get a grant on teaching? They are very few and they are very small in terms of money.
Yeah. So absolutely, almost every grant I've got is very small. Starting small, but little things like being able to pay someone to do all the promotional work for a course you develop, or being able to pay someone to do the editing for videos you create. So I started small, but now I'm able to partner more with digital accessibility as more a specialist subject. We are talking about software development, or working with banks, or supporting let's say a museum with making their resources accessible. So it links to teaching, and I also ensure I'm working with students on these grants. So it is still possible to manage that. And I think looking at the ref criteria, eventually what will matter is, are you paid to do this work by the organization that's supporting you? So as long as you are able to work with that, that's manageable. But yes, my grants are getting bigger. They won't get, I don't think they will become the same millions that the research staff would get. But but there are healthy ones available.
Okay, that's wonderful to hear. That's encouraging and promising. My last question, I'm sorry, colleagues, if anybody has questions. I have a question about reasonable adjustment. We do have the universal design in general, but we don't have the, we do have coming a policy for reasonable adjustment. So I wonder, how did you apply this universal reasonable adjustment, and how would that differ from the university reasonable adjustment policy? Because the number of reasonable adjustment has been reduced by 85%, you said. So
Yeah.
how did it happen?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I meant by that is, let's say if students ask for, so each student asks for 10 adjustments, 10 different things that they want. They want coursework in a certain way. They want extension. They want lectures in advance. They want the slides provided in a certain format. So it comes with a long list. And by the time you do the universal reasonable adjustments, which is if you make these changes for everyone as a default and you have a department template and a department timing, you start removing many of these individual requests that are coming as part of the reasonable adjustment. So that's how it works. So when it actually gets to you now, the reasonable adjustment request comes to you. Instead of 10, you only get 1 or 2 specific things that you need for the student. So the burden has reduced significantly for how many students we are tracking. So instead of looking at, if we look at 28 students, if we looked at 28 students 5 years ago, we will be looking at 200 different adjustments, and now we are looking at more like 28 adjustments.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we really want to have this in control, especially reasonable adjustment. And I'm not sure how it's in Goldsmith. We recently have been admitting a student with severe hearing disability. You talked a little bit about interpreter, but they are a shortage, national shortage for British Sign Language, and we are having difficulty securing one and making them on board during the lecture online. So I don't know if you face a case like this, and how did you worked with it?
No, to be honest, I don't work directly with securing the support, so I haven't actually addressed that directly, at least not recently. So last time I'd worked directly with a deaf student who used the sign language was about 6 years ago. And there were 2 of them who'd take turns all day. So I don't know what the temperature is right now.
Thank you so much. I would like to open the floor for questions. Anyone? Isabel would love to ask question. Isabel, go ahead.
Okay, hold on a second. Too many buttons in one go. Okay, thank you. That was fascinating. It's always interesting to hear actual how things have actually been done rather than the theory. Now the question's already been asked about getting staff buy-in to fill in questionnaires, so fair enough. But the question I have is regarding the universal plan, I suppose. So you talked about the universal plan and making sure that the VLE is structured in a way and is populated in a way that removes a lot of the special requests, I suppose, and special adjustments that need to be made. Have you done any of that in terms of design of assessment?
Yes, we have. Good. I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked. I didn't speak about that at all. So we took a step back, and I went for UDL approach, Universal Design for Learning. That I felt was a bit more complex and challenging because that is changing how you teach and changing how you assess rather than putting things in a different way or checking something. It's not like changing a font. The teaching aspect continues to be a challenge, but assessment, I would say, is where we have made the most difference when it comes to universal design for learning. So I'll give you one example is building in options. So if we are, and sometimes we have to go all the way back to learning outcome. So presentation, I would say, is the most obvious one. And many students come with reasonable adjustments where they say we've got anxiety, we don't want to present. Really asking the question, if you are a computer science student, do you need to know how to stand up and present in front of 200 students? And the answer is no. You need to know how to communicate. You don't need to be a presenter, public speaker. So thinking through each component of our assessment and building in the option to say, changing the terminology and saying, we want you to communicate this. For example, it could be a presentation. It could be a pre-recorded presentation. It could be an interactive website where you are presenting your ideas. It could be something else, because if you're a computer science student, you've got many ways of presenting an idea. Do that. But this is what you will be marked for. Ideas to being able to communicate. And some students preferred writing a report where they, that's how they wanted to communicate. That's also fine. Now, one key challenge that kept coming up was, what if a student continues to avoid an essential skill that they should have throughout their time? So we were quite upfront with students. Do you want to, because our classes were quite big, or at least some modules classes are quite big, others are quite small. We'll agree with the student, if you want to present, and I built that into the assessment guidelines as well, not the module spec, but the assessment guidelines, saying if this is a skill you'd like to develop, but are worried at this stage, please speak to me. And so what we did was we started in a year one, if a student with anxiety who would like to improve their presentation skills, year one, they will do a pre-recorded presentation. Year two, they will present only to their lecturer, and then year three, smaller group. So, you gradually build them up to that skill. But we also gave the freedom to some students to say, look, I never want to present in front of a room again. But we tell them, look, basic employability skills, if you're going to an interview, you might have to stand up and speak. So now is the learning space for them, for you. So presentation, that's how it was. Projects, we had portfolios. It hasn't helped the whole generative AI being thrown in with coursework and the variety. We've had to navigate that separately, but that's a different conversation. But it's been a huge help for students with disabilities as well, how they use AI to mitigate some of the challenges they have. So hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you. I imagine it's quite a big topic, but it's interesting to get a concrete example of what can be done that gives ideas. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Any more questions?
No, I popped in the chat the link to the course in Open University that I built. So if anyone's interested in getting a digital badge, you're welcome.
Well, I will definitely have a look at it. I think, we do have a question. Nazma, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jennifer, for your very, very informative presentation. So I would like to know, so in terms of scale, so you started with the department and then you scaled up, right? So in terms of student number, would you be able to give us an idea what was the
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So department level, we started with around 1,400 students.
Yeah, okay.
And scaling up to nearly 10,000.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for your question. I think we are quite close to conclude our talk today. Thank you so much, Jennifer, again for fascinating talk, and I will be in touch. And I'm sure that colleagues will access this video offline. Thank you again, and yeah, have a wonderful day, everyone. And Jennifer.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.